7-year-old Emma Wilson pressed her small face against the cold hospital window, watching the busy London street below. Her once golden hair had fallen out months ago, leaving behind a pink knit hat that her grandmother had made with trembling fingers. The doctors had given her family the news that no parent ever wants to hear. Emma had leukemia, and despite all the treatments, chemotherapy sessions, and countless nights spent in sterile hospital rooms, her little body was losing the fight. Her mother, Sarah Wilson, sat quietly in the corner chair, pretending to read a magazine while stealing glances at her daughter. Sarah's eyes were red and swollen from crying in bathroom stalls and empty hallways where Emma couldn't see her breakdown. Her husband, Michael, had gone home to shower and check on their older son, 10-year-old Jake, who was staying with his aunt. The family had been living between home and hospital for 8 months now, and everyone was exhausted. Emma turned away from the window and looked at her mother with those bright blue eyes that still sparkled despite everything she had endured. The little girl had shown incredible strength throughout her illness, never complaining about the painful procedures or the medicine that made her sick. She had become the hospital's favorite patient, always greeting the nurses with a smile and sharing her coloring books with other sick children. "Mummy," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "can I tell you about my dream?" Sarah immediately put down her magazine and moved to sit on the edge of Emma's bed. She had learned to treasure every conversation, every moment, every breath her daughter took. "Of course, sweetheart. Tell me all about it." Emma's eyes lit up as she began to speak. "I dreamed I was a real princess, and I lived in a beautiful castle with tall towers and pretty gardens. There were horses and carriages, and everyone wore fancy clothes. But the best part was the guards. They wore those tall black hats and red coats, and they stood so straight and proud. They protected the castle and everyone inside it." Sarah smiled, brushing a gentle hand over Emma's hat. "That sounds like a wonderful dream, love. Mummy, do you think the Queen's guards are real? The ones I see on TV sometimes?" "Yes, darling. They're very real. They work at Buckingham Palace and other royal places. They're called the Queen's Guard, and they're very special soldiers." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she looked up at her mother with such hope in her eyes that Sarah felt her heart break all over again. Do you think I could ever meet one? Just to see if they're as tall and brave as in my dreams?" Sarah felt tears threatening to spill over, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "I don't know, sweetheart. That would be quite difficult to arrange, but not impossible," Emma pressed with the persistence that only a child could have. Sarah took a deep breath. "Not impossible, no. Just very, very difficult." That evening, after Emma had fallen asleep clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Sarah walked down to the hospital's small chapel. She wasn't particularly religious, but she needed somewhere quiet to think. The chapel was empty except for a few candles flickering on the altar. Sarah sat in the back row and let herself cry for the first time in days. When Michael returned later that night, Sarah told him about Emma's wish. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, drinking cold coffee and talking in hushed tones while their daughter slept upstairs. Michael ran his hands through his hair, a habit he had developed since Emma's diagnosis. "How are we supposed to arrange something like that?" he asked. "We can't just walk up to Buckingham Palace and ask to speak to a guard. They're probably not even allowed to talk to visitors." "I know," Sarah replied, "but you saw her face when she talked about it." "Michael, she hasn't asked for anything this entire time. Not toys, not trips, not even to go home. Just this one thing." Michael nodded, understanding the weight of what his wife was saying. Emma had been the perfect patient, accepting every treatment with grace beyond her years. If this was what she wanted, they had to at least try. The next morning, Sarah started making phone calls. She began with the palace's public information line, explaining Emma's situation to a polite but distant receptionist who promised to pass along the message but couldn't make any promises. She called local news stations, thinking maybe publicity would help. She reached out to children's charities and Make-A-Wish organizations. Every conversation was the same: sympathy, promises to look into it, and gentle warnings that such requests were nearly impossible to fulfill. Meanwhile, Emma's condition continued to decline. The doctors had stopped talking about treatment options and started mentioning comfort care and making final arrangements. The family knew they were running out of time, but Emma seemed unaware of the urgency everyone else felt. She spent her days drawing pictures of castles and guards, asking the nurses if they had ever seen a real palace. and talking about her dream to anyone who would listen. One afternoon, Dr. Martinez, Emma's oncologist, pulled Sarah and Michael aside for a private conversation. His kind face was serious as he delivered the news they had been dreading but expecting. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but we need to start thinking about Emma's final weeks. Her body isn't responding to any of our treatments anymore. We're looking at perhaps a month, maybe 6 weeks if we're fortunate." Sarah felt the world tilt around her. Even though they had known this was coming, hearing it stated so plainly was devastating. Michael put his arm around her shoulders as they both tried to process what Dr. Martinez had said. "There is one thing I want to mention," the doctor continued gently. "Emma has been talking to all of us about wanting to meet the Queen's Guard. I know you've been trying to arrange something. I want you to know that if you do manage to make this happen, we'll do everything we can to make sure Emma is well enough to enjoy it. Sometimes when children have something special to look forward to, it gives them strength they didn't know they had." That evening, Sarah and Michael made a decision. They would try everything in their power to make Emma's wish come true. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. If their little girl's final wish was to meet a royal guard, then they would move heaven and earth to make it happen. Sarah Wilson had never been one to give up easily, but after 2 weeks of phone calls and emails, she was beginning to lose hope. Every official channel had led to polite rejections or endless paperwork that would take months to process. Emma didn't have months. The little girl was getting weaker each day, spending more time sleeping and less time drawing her beloved pictures of castles and guards. Michael had taken leave from his job at the accounting firm to be with his family full-time. He watched his wife make call after call, each rejection weighing heavier on her shoulders. One evening, as they sat in Emma's hospital room watching their daughter sleep, Michael had an idea. "What about social media?" he whispered to Sarah. "Maybe if we share Emma's story online, someone who knows someone might see it." Sarah looked up from her knitting, a tiny sweater she was making for Emma, even though they both knew she might never get to wear it. "I don't know, Michael. Emma's so private. She wouldn't want the whole world knowing about her illness." "But she's not private about wanting to meet the guards," Michael pointed out. "She tells everyone who visits about that dream. Maybe we don't have to mention how sick she is. Maybe we just say she's a little girl who loves the royal guards and would love to meet one." That night, after Emma had her evening medications and fallen into a deep sleep, Sarah created a simple post on social media. She chose a photo of Emma from before her illness, showing her bright smile and golden hair, holding a toy soldier she had painted to look like a Queen's Guard. The post read, "Our 7-year-old daughter Emma has a dream to meet one of the Queen's Guards. She talks about them every day and draws pictures of them constantly. If anyone knows how to make this happen, please help us give our little girl this magical experience." Sarah pressed the share button and immediately regretted it. What if people were cruel? What if no one cared? What if this just led to more disappointment for Emma? But something unexpected happened. Within an hour, the post had been shared 50 times. By morning, it had been shared over 1,000 times. Comments poured in from people around the world, sharing their own stories, offering encouragement, and most importantly, tagging friends who might be able to help. A woman named Janet Matthews, whose brother had served in the Queen's Guard 20 years earlier, shared the post in a private group for military families. A teacher in London shared it with her colleagues, one of whom had a husband currently serving at Windsor Castle. A tourist who had visited Buckingham Palace the previous summer tagged the official royal social media accounts. Emma woke up that morning to find her parents looking at Michael's phone with tears in their eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, struggling to sit up in her hospital bed. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart," Sarah said quickly. "People are trying to help make your wish come true." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? What kind of people?" Michael showed her some of the comments on the post. "Look at this one. This lady says her grandson is learning to be a guard. And this person says they know someone who works at the palace. And look here, Emma. This person says they're going to pray for your wish to come true." For the first time in weeks, Emma's face lit up with genuine joy. "All these people want to help me meet a guard?" "It looks that way," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes when you put something good out into the world, good things come back to you." The post continued to spread throughout the day. A radio DJ in Manchester mentioned it during his morning show. A blogger who wrote about London tourism shared it with her thousands of followers. Most amazingly, it was shared by a charity that supported military families, which had connections to active service members. By the afternoon, Sarah's phone was ringing constantly. A journalist from the local newspaper wanted to write a story about Emma. A representative from a children's charity called to offer help. Most surprisingly, a woman named Colonel Patricia Hayes called from the Ministry of Defense. "Mrs. Wilson," Colonel Hayes said in a crisp, professional voice, "I understand your daughter would like to meet one of our guardsmen." Sarah's heart pounded. "Yes, that's correct. It's her biggest dream. I'm not promising anything, you understand. There are protocols and procedures that must be followed. But I'd like to know more about Emma and what exactly she's hoping for." Sarah told Colonel Hayes everything. About Emma's illness. About her dreams of castles and brave guards, about how she drew pictures every day and talked about the guards to anyone who would listen. She was careful not to mention how little time they had left, not wanting to make it seem like they were asking for sympathy. "Mrs. Wilson," Colonel Hayes said after listening carefully, "can you bring Emma to the phone?" Emma was awake but tired from her afternoon treatment. Sarah helped her sit up and held the phone to her ear. "Hello?" Emma said softly. "Hello, Emma. My name is Colonel Hayes. I work with the soldiers who guard the Queen. I heard that you would like to meet one of them." Emma's eyes went wide, and suddenly she was more alert than she had been in days. "Yes, ma'am. I dream about them every night. They're so tall and brave, and they protect everyone. I draw pictures of them, but I bet they're even more wonderful in real life." Colonel Hayes found herself smiling despite her professional demeanor. There was something pure and genuine about this little girl's enthusiasm that touched her heart. "What would you like to ask a guard if you met one, Emma?" Emma thought carefully before answering. "I would ask him if it's hard to stand so still for so long, and I would ask him if he ever gets scared, and I would thank him for protecting the Queen and for being so brave." "Those are very good questions, Emma. Can I speak to your mummy again?" Sarah took the phone back, her hands shaking. "Yes, Colonel Hayes. Mrs. Wilson, I cannot make any official promises, but I am going to speak with some people. The guards take their duties very seriously, but they also understand the importance of inspiring the next generation. Emma sounds like a very special little girl." After the call ended, Sarah didn't dare get her hopes up, but she felt something she hadn't felt in months, a tiny spark of possibility. That evening, when Michael arrived with fish and chips from Emma's favorite shop, they told him about the call. Emma ate more dinner than she had in weeks, chattering excitedly about what she might say to a real guard. "Daddy," she said between bites, "do you think he'll let me touch his hat? Just very gently so I don't mess it up?" Michael exchanged a look with Sarah over Emma's head. Whether or not they could make this happen, seeing their daughter this happy and excited was worth everything. For the first time since Emma's diagnosis, they went to sleep that night with hope in their hearts. Unknown to the Wilson family, Emma's story was still spreading across the internet. It had reached someone very important who had the power to make extraordinary things happen, but they wouldn't find out about that until the next morning. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the hospital. Emma was having her morning medications when a nurse knocked on the door with a puzzled expression. "Mrs. Wilson, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says his name is James Crawford and he's from the palace." Sarah's heart nearly stopped. She looked at Michael, who was equally shocked. "The palace? As in Buckingham Palace?" "That's what he said. He's waiting in the family conference room down the hall." Sarah quickly smoothed Emma's blanket and whispered, "We'll be right back, sweetheart. Keep working on your drawing." James Crawford was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s wearing a neat navy suit. He stood when Sarah and Michael entered the room, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, thank you for seeing me. I'm James Crawford, Private Secretary to His Royal Highness. I understand your daughter Emma has a particular interest in the Queen's Guard." Michael found his voice first. "Yes, sir. It's been her dream to meet one. But we never expected anyone from the actual palace to come here." James smiled. "Emma's story has reached some very important people. When His Royal Highness learned about a brave little girl who dreams of meeting our guardsmen, he was quite moved. He asked me to come and speak with you personally." Sarah felt tears beginning to form. "You mean the prince knows about Emma?" "Indeed he does, and he would very much like to help make her wish come true. But first, I need to understand exactly what Emma is hoping for. Is she well enough to travel? What would make this experience most special for her?" Sarah and Michael exchanged glances. They had been so focused on just trying to arrange a meeting that they hadn't thought about the details. She's been asking to meet a guard to see if they're as tall and brave as she imagines, Sarah explained. She draws pictures of them every day. I think she just wants to see one up close, maybe ask a few questions. And her health? James asked gently. Michael's voice was quiet. She's very ill, sir. The doctors have said she doesn't have much time left. Maybe a few weeks. James nodded solemnly. I see. Then we must make sure this is truly special. Would it be possible for Emma to come to Windsor Castle? His Royal Highness thinks she might enjoy seeing the guards in their actual workplace rather than just meeting one in a hospital setting. Sarah gasped. Windsor Castle? Emma could actually visit Windsor Castle? If she's well enough to travel, yes. We would arrange for a private visit. She could meet several guardsmen, learn about their duties, and perhaps even see the changing of the guard ceremony up close. His Royal Highness thought she might also enjoy a brief tour of some of the castle's rooms. Michael was struggling to believe what he was hearing. Sir, this is incredibly generous, but we could never afford anything like this. We've spent everything on Emma's medical bills. James waved his hand dismissively. Please don't concern yourself with costs. This would be entirely arranged by the palace. Transportation, any special medical needs during the visit, everything. His Royal Highness considers it a privilege to help grant Emma's wish. When would this happen? Sarah asked, thinking about Emma's declining health. As soon as possible. Perhaps this weekend if Emma is feeling up to it. I know time is of great importance, Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. This is beyond anything we ever hoped for. Say you'll bring Emma to Windsor Castle. James smiled. But first I'd very much like to meet her, if that's all right. His Royal Highness asked me to give her something. They returned to Emma's room to find her working intently on a new drawing. This one showed a castle with multiple towers and guards standing at attention. When she looked up and saw her parents with a stranger, she suddenly became shy, pulling her blanket up to her chin. Emma, sweetheart, Sarah said gently. This is Mr. Crawford. He works at a real castle, and he came here especially to meet you. Emma's eyes widened. A real castle? Like in my dreams? James knelt down beside her bed so he was at her eye level. Yes, Emma. I work at Windsor Castle, where some of the Queen's guards live and work. I've heard that you're very interested in meeting them. Emma nodded eagerly, her shyness forgotten. I dream about them every night. Are they really as tall as they look on television? And do their hats really weigh a lot? And do they ever get tired of standing so still? James chuckled. Those are excellent questions, Emma. Would you like to ask those questions to real guardsmen? I could do that. I could really ask them myself. Yes, you could. In fact, I'd like to invite you to come to Windsor Castle this weekend as our special guest. You could meet several guards, watch them do their duties, and even see inside the castle. What do you think about that? Emma looked at her parents to make sure this wasn't a dream. When she saw their nodding faces and happy tears, she turned back to James with pure joy. I think that would be the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. James reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. His Royal Highness asked me to give you this as an invitation to the castle. Emma opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a beautiful silver pin in the shape of the royal crown, with tiny gems that sparkled in the hospital room's light. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, she whispered. It's yours to keep. Emma, and when you come to Windsor Castle, you'll be treated like the royalty you are. After James left, promising to call with all the arrangements within a few hours, Emma held her pin up to the light, watching it sparkle. Mommy, Daddy, is this really happening? Am I really going to visit a real castle and meet real guards? Yes, darling, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, you really are. That afternoon, the hospital staff could hardly believe the news. Dr. Martinez was amazed that Emma had perked up so dramatically. Her vital signs were the strongest they had been in weeks. The nurses were busy helping her decide what to wear to the castle and teaching her proper royal etiquette as a joke. Emma spent the entire day planning what she would say to each guard, practicing her curtsy, and drawing a new picture of Windsor Castle based on the photographs James had left for her. For the first time since her diagnosis, Emma fell asleep that night not because she was exhausted from fighting her illness, but because she was tired from the excitement of anticipation. Neither Emma nor her parents could have imagined that their weekend visit to Windsor Castle would become something far more significant than they ever dreamed possible. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, perfect weather for Emma's long-awaited visit to Windsor Castle. The little girl had barely slept from excitement, and she was awake before dawn asking her parents if it was time to leave yet. Sarah had packed a small bag with Emma's medications, her favorite stuffed rabbit, and the drawing she had made specially for the guards. A sleek black car arrived at the hospital at exactly 9 o'clock. The driver, a kind older gentleman named Thomas, helped Emma into the back seat where a booster seat had been specially installed. Emma pressed her face against the window as they drove through London and out into the countryside, pointing out everything she saw and asking countless questions. "Look, Daddy, are those the Queen's horses?" she asked as they passed a field of grazing animals. "I don't think so, sweetheart," Michael laughed, "but maybe we'll see some royal horses today." As Windsor Castle came into view, Emma gasped audibly. The massive stone walls and tall towers looked even more magnificent than anything she had drawn or imagined. "It's real," she whispered in amazement. "It's really, really real." James Crawford was waiting for them at a private entrance along with a woman he introduced as Lady Margaret Whitmore, who worked with the royal household. Emma was wearing her best dress, the one she had worn to her cousin's wedding the year before, along with her special crown pin proudly displayed on her collar. "Emma," Lady Margaret said with a warm smile, "we are so honored to have you visit us today. Are you ready to meet some very special guardsmen?" Emma nodded eagerly, though she suddenly seemed small and fragile, standing in the shadow of the ancient castle walls. Sarah squeezed her hand reassuringly as they were led through a courtyard, where several guards were standing at their posts. The first guard they met was Guardsman William Thompson, a tall young man with kind eyes who knelt down to Emma's level. "Good morning, Miss Emma," he said formally. "I understand you've been wanting to meet one of us." Emma stared up at him in wonder. "You're even taller than I thought you would be. And your hat is enormous." William smiled. "This is called a bearskin, and you're right, it is quite heavy. Would you like to know how much it weighs?" "Yes, please." "About 2 pounds. That might not sound like much, but when you're wearing it for hours at a time, it gets quite heavy on your neck." Emma nodded seriously. "Do you ever get tired of standing so still for so long?" "Sometimes I do," William admitted. "But I think about how important my job is. I'm protecting this castle and everyone in it. When I remember that, standing still doesn't seem so difficult." Emma reached into her bag and pulled out her drawing. "I made this picture of you. Well, not you exactly, but guards like you. I hope you like it." William accepted the drawing with great ceremony, studying it carefully. "This is absolutely wonderful, Emma. You've captured our uniform perfectly. May I show this to the other guards? They would be very impressed." Throughout the morning, Emma met guard after guard, each one taking time to answer her questions, show her their equipment, and treat her like the most important visitor they had ever received. She learned about their training, their duties, and their deep pride in serving the crown. When she asked Guardsman Peters if he ever got scared, he knelt down and whispered conspiratorially, "Sometimes I do get a little nervous, especially during big ceremonies. But you know what helps me? I think about brave little girls like you, and it reminds me that I need to be brave too." Emma beamed at this response. "I'm not that brave. I cry sometimes when the medicine makes me sick." "Emma," Guardsman Peters said gently, "being brave doesn't mean you never cry or never get scared. Being brave means you keep going even when things are difficult. And from what I've heard about you, you're one of the bravest people I've ever met." The highlight of the visit came when the guards performed a special mini-mo, changing of the guard ceremony just for Emma. She watched in fascination as they marched in perfect formation, their movements precise and coordinated. When it was over, she clapped so enthusiastically that several of the guards had to work hard to maintain their serious expressions. Lady Margaret then took the family on a private tour of several castle rooms. Emma was particularly enchanted by the state apartments with their beautiful paintings and ornate furniture. "Do real princesses live here?" she asked in wonder. "Members of the royal family do stay here sometimes," Lady Margaret explained, "and today we have our own special princess visiting." As they walked through the castle, Emma's energy began to flag. The morning had been wonderful but exhausting, and her illness was catching up with her. Sarah noticed her daughter's pale complexion and suggested they might need to rest. "Of course," James said immediately. "We've prepared a special room where Emma can rest before lunch." The room they were taken to was elegant but comfortable, with a view of the castle gardens. Emma settled into a soft chair while her parents spoke quietly with James about how overwhelmed and grateful they were for the entire experience. "This has exceeded our wildest dreams," Sarah said, tears in her eyes. "Emma has never been this happy. Even if she gets sicker after this, we'll always have today." James looked thoughtful. "Mrs. Wilson, would it be presumptuous of me to ask about Emma's medical situation?" "I ask because His Royal Highness has been following Emma's story closely, and he's grown quite fond of her." Michael explained Emma's prognosis as gently as he could. "The doctors have said it's a matter of weeks now, maybe a month if we're very fortunate. We're trying to make every day as special as possible for her." "I see." James was quiet for a moment. "In that case, I wonder if I might suggest something. His Royal Highness has been thinking that Emma might enjoy having an ongoing connection to the guards, perhaps letters or photographs. Would that be something she might like?" "She would absolutely love that," Sarah said. "She talks about the guards constantly. Having continued contact would mean the world to her." James smiled mysteriously. "I think we might be able to arrange something even more special than letters. But let me speak with His Royal Highness first." After lunch in the castle's private dining room, where Emma was served on real royal china and treated like honored nobility, it was time to leave. Emma was exhausted but glowing with happiness. Each guard she had met came to say goodbye personally, and several of them gave her small gifts: a miniature guard figurine, a postcard of the castle, and a photograph signed by all the guards she had met. As they prepared to leave, Guardsman Thompson approached Emma one final time. "Miss Emma, I want you to know that meeting you today has been one of the greatest honors of my service. You've reminded all of us why we do what we do." Emma looked up at him with tired but shining eyes. "Will I ever see you again?" "I certainly hope so," he replied, glancing meaningfully at James Crawford. "I have a feeling this isn't goodbye forever." As their car pulled away from Windsor Castle, Emma clutched her gifts and pressed her face to the window for one last look at the guards standing proudly at their posts. "That was the best day of my whole life," she said softly. "I wish it could last forever." What Emma didn't know was that several very important people had been watching her visit very carefully, and her wish for ongoing connection to the guards was about to come true in ways she never could have imagined. The week following Emma's visit to Windsor Castle was magical in ways the Wilson family could never have anticipated. On Monday morning, a beautiful bouquet of flowers arrived at the hospital with a note that read, "For our brave friend Emma, from all the guards at Windsor Castle." Emma carefully arranged the flowers in her room and insisted on drawing a thank you picture for each guard. Tuesday brought an even bigger surprise. James Crawford called to ask if Emma would like to receive a special video message. An hour later, Sarah was holding up her phone so Emma could watch Guardsman Thompson and 5 other guards she had met, all in full uniform, delivering a personal message. "Hello, Emma," Guardsman Thompson said, standing at attention. "We wanted you to know that we think about you every day during our duties. You've inspired all of us to be braver and better guards." Each guard took a turn sharing something special. Guardsman Peters told her about the new recruits he was training and how he told them about the brave little girl who visited. Guardsman Williams described the beautiful sunset he had seen from his post and how it reminded him of the golden color in one of Emma's drawings. Emma watched the video 12 times, memorizing every word. By Wednesday, word had spread throughout the entire Windsor Castle staff about the remarkable little girl who had visited. Kitchen staff sent cookies shaped like crowns. Gardeners sent pressed flowers from the royal gardens. Even the castle's historian sent a child-friendly book about the history of the Queen's Guard with a personal inscription for Emma. But the real surprise came on Thursday. Emma was having a particularly difficult day. Her treatments had been more painful than usual, and she was too weak to sit up for long periods. Sarah was reading to her when James Crawford arrived unexpectedly at the hospital, accompanied by someone they didn't recognize. "Mrs. Wilson, I'd like you to meet Colonel David Hayes, commanding officer of the guards Emma met at Windsor Castle." Colonel Hayes was an imposing figure in his dress uniform, but his eyes were kind as he approached Emma's bed. "Miss Emma, I've heard wonderful things about your visit to our castle. Our guards haven't stopped talking about you." Emma managed a weak smile. "They were all so nice to me. I think about them every day." "Well, Emma, they think about you too. In fact, they've been asking me if there was some way they could visit you here, since you visited them. Would you like that?" Emma's eyes widened with what little strength she had. They would come here? To see me? If you'd like them to, yes. Not all at once, of course. But perhaps one or two could visit you each week just to chat and see how you're doing. Sarah felt her heart skip. Colonel Hayes, that's incredibly generous, but surely your guards have more important duties than visiting a sick little girl. Colonel Hayes turned to Sarah with a serious expression. Mrs. Wilson, you'd be surprised to learn that morale among my guards has never been higher since Emma's visit. She reminded them why they serve, what they're protecting, and what true courage looks like. Visiting Emma isn't a duty for them. It's an honor they're requesting. And so began the most extraordinary few weeks of Emma's life. Every few days, one of the guards she had met would visit her in the hospital. They never came in uniform, but they brought stories, pictures, and updates from the castle. Guardsman Thompson taught her card games and brought her a chess set, patiently teaching her how to play. Guardsman Peters brought his guitar and played songs for her, even learning Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star because it was her favorite. The visits weren't just good for Emma, they were transforming the entire hospital ward. Other sick children gathered to meet the guards, and soon the visits became small events that brightened everyone's day. The guards brought coloring books, small toys, and most importantly, their time and attention. Emma's brother Jake, who had been struggling with his sister's illness, was particularly fascinated by Guardsman Williams, who took time to explain military history and even brought Jake a small model soldier to paint. For the first time in months, the Wilson family felt moments of genuine joy amid their sorrow. Dr. Martinez was amazed by the change in Emma's condition. While her illness was still progressing, her spirits were so improved that she seemed to have more energy and better appetite. I've never seen anything like it, he told Sarah privately. Sometimes the best medicine isn't medicine at all. 3 weeks after the castle visit, Emma was having a particularly good day when James Crawford arrived with the most surprising news yet. Emma, he said, sitting carefully on the edge of her bed, I have a very special message for you. His Royal Highness has been following your friendship with our guards, and he's been quite impressed by your courage and spirit. Emma listened with wide eyes as James continued. He would like to do something very special for you. He wants to make you an honorary member of the Queen's Guard. Sarah gasped. Is that even possible? It's never been done before, James admitted. But His Royal Highness believes that Emma embodies the values we look for in our finest guards: courage, dignity, service to others, and grace under pressure. He wants to recognize that officially. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had just heard. What does that mean exactly? James smiled. It means you would have an official certificate stating that you are an honorary member of the Queen's Guard. You would receive a special badge that only the most distinguished people receive. And most importantly, you would always be considered part of our family. Emma's eyes filled with tears of joy. I would really be a guard? Even though I'm just a little girl? Emma, James said gently, some of the bravest soldiers I've ever known have been small in stature but enormous in courage. Size doesn't matter when you have a heart like yours. The ceremony was planned for the following week, but Emma's condition took a sudden turn. She developed a high fever and had difficulty breathing. Dr. Martinez called the family together for a serious conversation. I'm afraid Emma's body is shutting down faster than we expected, he said gently. We're looking at days now, not weeks. Sarah felt the world crashing around her. But the ceremony, she was so looking forward to being made an honorary guard. When James Crawford learned about Emma's deteriorating condition, he made an immediate phone call. Within 2 hours, he was back at the hospital with Colonel Hayes and 3 of the guards Emma had become closest to. Thompson, Peters, and Williams. We're not going to let Emma miss her ceremony, Colonel Hayes announced. If she can't come to the castle, we'll bring the ceremony to her. That evening, Emma's hospital room was transformed. The guards had brought a small podium, official documents, and even a miniature version of the ceremonial sword used in military ceremonies. Despite her weakness, Emma insisted on wearing her best dress and her special crown pin. Colonel Hayes stood at attention as he began the ceremony. Miss Emma Wilson, you are called before us today not because of rank or station, but because of the extraordinary courage, grace, and dignity you have shown in the face of great adversity. Emma listened intently, her small hand holding tight to her mother's. The Queen's Guard exists to protect what is most precious in our realm. We protect not just buildings or individuals. but the values and virtues that make life meaningful. You, Emma Wilson, embody those values better than any soldier I've ever commanded." Colonel Hayes held up an official certificate with Emma's name written in elegant script. "By the authority vested in me and with the blessing of His Royal Highness, I hereby name you an honorary member of the Queen's Guard, with all the rights, privileges, and recognition that such membership entails." Guardsman Thompson stepped forward with a beautiful wooden box. Inside was a special badge, similar to the one worn by the guards but sized perfectly for Emma. "This badge represents your membership in our brotherhood, Emma. As long as you wear it, you'll carry the strength and courage of every guard who has ever served." Emma's voice was barely a whisper, but her words were clear. "I promise to be brave and protect others just like you taught me." After the ceremony, the guards took turns sitting with Emma, sharing stories and holding her hand. Guardsman Peters played quiet songs on his guitar, while Guardsman Williams read her favorite stories. Guardsman Thompson taught Jake a special handshake that guards used to recognize each other. As the evening grew late, Emma looked around at her family and her guard friends with peaceful eyes. "I'm not scared anymore," she said softly. "I know the guards will always be watching over me." Emma passed away peacefully 2 days later, surrounded by her family and holding the honorary guard badge close to her heart. The guards who had become her friends served as honorary pallbearers at her funeral, and Colonel Hayes delivered a eulogy that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Emma Wilson was 7 years old, but she possessed the heart of the finest soldier I've ever known. She faced her greatest battle not with weapons but with grace, courage, and love. She reminded all of us what it truly means to serve others and find joy even in the darkest times. 6 months after Emma's funeral, Sarah Wilson stood in her kitchen staring at an envelope that had arrived with the morning mail. The return address simply read, "Windsor Castle," and she felt her heart clench with both grief and curiosity. Since Emma's death, the family had received several thoughtful cards and messages from the guards. But this envelope looked more formal and official. Inside was a letter from James Crawford, along with something that would change the Wilson family's life forever. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," the letter began, "I hope this letter finds you and Jake finding moments of peace amid your grief. Emma's impact on all of us at Windsor Castle continues to this day, and I write to you with news that I believe she would have been thrilled to hear." Cree called for Michael and Jake to join her as she continued, reading, "His Royal Highness has been deeply moved by Emma's story and the way it has inspired everyone who knew her. He has decided to establish the Emma Wilson Fund, a charitable foundation dedicated to granting wishes for terminally ill children who dream of experiences related to British history, heritage, and service." Michael sat down heavily in his chair. "They're creating a charity in Emma's name?" Sarah continued reading, her voice shaking. "The fund will be administered jointly by the Royal Household and the Ministry of Defense, ensuring that children like Emma can experience the magic of meeting the Queen's Guard, visiting royal residences, and learning about service to others. The fund will also provide support for families dealing with childhood terminal illnesses, including financial assistance, counseling services, and practical support." The letter went on to explain that His Royal Highness wanted the Wilson family to be intimately involved in the charity's work. They were being asked to serve on the Board of Trustees and help identify children who might benefit from the program. "But that's not all," Sarah read, her voice now filled with wonder. "His Royal Highness has also commissioned a memorial to Emma that will be placed in the gardens at Windsor Castle. It will be a bench inscribed with Emma's favorite quote about the guards, along with a small garden of her favorite flowers. Families visiting the castle will be able to sit there and remember that courage comes in all sizes." Jake, who had been unusually quiet since his sister's death, looked up with interest for the first time in months. "Emma's going to have a real memorial at the castle, where the guards can see it every day?" 3 weeks later, the Wilson family found themselves back at Windsor Castle for the dedication ceremony. This time the visit was bittersweet but filled with purpose. A small crowd had gathered, including all the guards who had befriended Emma, hospital staff who had cared for her, and families of other children who had been inspired by Emma's story. The memorial bench was beautiful, crafted from English oak, and positioned where visitors could see both the castle and the gardens. The inscription read, "In memory of Emma Wilson, honorary member of the Queen's Guard. They're so tall and brave, and they protect everyone. Her courage reminds us that heroes come in every size." Colonel Hayes spoke at the dedication. Emma Wilson lived only 7 years, but in that short time she taught us more about courage, joy, and service than many people learn in a lifetime. This memorial ensures that her spirit will continue to inspire generations of visitors to Windsor Castle. Guardsman Thompson, who had been promoted since Emma's death, planted the first flower in Emma's garden. Every time I stand guard now, I think about Emma's questions and her drawings. She made me a better soldier and a better person. The Emma Wilson Fund was officially launched that same day. Within hours of the announcement, donations began pouring in from around the world. People who had heard Emma's story through social media, news reports, and word of mouth wanted to help. Other children experienced the same magic Emma had found. The first child to benefit from the fund was a 6-year-old boy named Tommy who was fascinated by military history and dreamed of seeing the Tower of London. Like Emma, he was terminally ill, and like Emma, his wish was granted with full royal support. The guards who met Tommy told him all about Emma, and he was given his own honorary badge to match hers. Sarah found herself traveling frequently to meet with other families and help coordinate wish fulfillments. The work was emotionally challenging but deeply meaningful. Emma always wanted to help other people, she told Michael one evening after, returning from a visit with a little girl who wanted to meet the horses at the Royal Mews. I think she would love knowing that her story is helping other children have magical experiences. A year after the fund's establishment, it had granted wishes for over 50 children. Some wanted to meet guards like Emma had, but others had different dreams. Touring the Tower of London, meeting the royal horses, or learning about British naval history at Portsmouth. Each wish was granted with the same attention to detail and genuine care that Emma had received. Jake, now 11, had become an enthusiastic helper with the charity. He corresponded with several of the children who had received wishes, sharing stories about his sister and encouraging them during their treatments. The experience had helped him process his grief while finding a way to honor Emma's memory. On the 2nd anniversary of Emma's death, the Wilson family returned to Windsor Castle for a special commemoration. The Emma Wilson Fund had grown beyond anything they had imagined, becoming one of the most successful wish-granting charities in the UK. But more importantly, it had created a lasting legacy of Emma's belief that even the smallest people could be heroes. As they sat on Emma's memorial bench that day, watching the guards change their posts in the distance, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had begun with her daughter's simple dream to meet a royal guard. She just wanted to see if they were as tall and brave as she imagined, Sarah said quietly. Michael nodded, putting his arm around his wife and son. She discovered they were brave, but what she didn't realize is that she was teaching them about true courage. Guardsman Thompson, now a sergeant, approached the family after his duty shift. Mrs. Wilson, I wanted you to know that Emma's story is now part of our official training program. Every new guard learns about the little girl who reminded us why we serve. As the sun set over Windsor Castle that evening, the Wilson family knew that while Emma's physical presence was gone, her spirit lived on in every child whose wish was granted, every guard who remembered her courage, and every family who found hope in the darkest of times. Emma Wilson had dreamed of meeting heroes, but in the end, she had become one herself. Her legacy would continue touching lives for generations to come, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can create the biggest changes in the world. The Emma Wilson Fund continues to operate today, having granted over 500 wishes and providing support to thousands of families. At Windsor Castle, Emma's memorial bench remains a popular spot for visitors, and the guards still speak of the brave little girl who taught them that true courage has nothing to do with size, and everything to do with the size of one's heart.